Save the Date podcast. I'm Sheridan.
And I'm Juliet. And you're listening to the Save the Date podcast, where we talk all things weddings, jewellery and romance. With love from Cullen Jewellery.
Hello and welcome back to the Save the Date podcast. I'm Sheridan.
And I'm Juliet. And we are so happy you're here.
Today, we're going to go through some of the most common wedding day regrets. So you only get to have your wedding day generally once or
Hopefully.
wedding weekend. Yeah, hopefully
But
once.
it's fine if it's more than once.
It is, of course, fine if it's more than once, but generally only once with this one person, I guess.
Yes.
And the last thing that you want is to have regrets on the day. So we have a big list of, some of the most common regrets, and hopefully this will just kind of help ease a little bit of that pressure and maybe make you reconsider some things in the wedding planning process.
So sit back, relax, and let's get straight into the episode.
All right, so our first wedding day regret is not hiring a professional photographer. So your photographer plays, I guess, one of the biggest roles in your wedding and the memories that you'll have of your wedding day. So it can be, I guess, very common for people to, want to skimp out a little bit on a photographer, or if they have a friend that has, a decent camera and they can get a good price, it's kind of common for people to say, oh, well, if we can get it cheaper with, our friend John, then
we'll go down.
Let's go down that path.
Yeah.
But if John has no experience in shooting weddings, chances are the quality of the photos that you get back are not going to be all that great.
Yeah.
And if you're only getting a photographer, like instead of a videographer, if you're only getting one, they're your only memories of the day that you can actually see and not just imagine.
Yeah. And I feel like throughout, this is just my opinion for myself. It's like your wedding day is one of those things throughout your life where it's like you don't really need a photographer for many other things.
Yeah.
Or you're never going to really splurge on a photographer any other time in your life. So it's like, for me, it would be a non-negotiable to get a decent photographer.
Yeah.
And I know people's budgets do play as an element in this, but I just feel like it's just something you want. Because they're the kind of photos you hang on your wall. They're the kind of photos you show your kids, your grandkids. So it's like, why not splurge?
And you want to be proud of them as well. You don't want to be looking at those photos that you've gotten and none of them are print worthy, or you don't really want to be sharing them with everyone because you just don't think that they're that good.
Yeah, because it's not only just the image as a whole, it's also being able to photograph you in a flattering way. So you look back at the photos and you're like, oh, it looked so good. Or, and it's you're looking at the photos thinking oh, I love these so much. Or not that we look so awkward.
Yeah.
sort of thing. So it's not just the colours and the clarity of the photos because of the equipment. It's also that skill of the photographer to
posing
capture,
you.
Posing you and capturing you from an angle that is very photogenic.
Yeah. I think as well, you kind of mentioned the colours and things, and I think that does also make a really big difference. A lot of the time, when you're looking at professional photography of weddings on Instagram or, Pinterest or whatever, they have most likely been heavily edited and the colours of the photo have been played around with, and that also plays into how the photo looks and how it comes across and being print worthy and that kind of thing. Another thing as well, we mentioned the money. Something that my dad in particular has instilled in me throughout my life and any kind of big spending things is when you're already spending so much money on a wedding, upwards of, tens of thousands of dollars, an extra $1,000 for a really good quality photographer is kind of not that much in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
I think you kind of need to look at it in that way a little bit as well. And I'm not saying that means go and splurge on the most expensive photographer that you can find, but try and look at it in that scheme of things. If you're already spending so much, spending that little bit extra that is then going to have a much more positive thing to kind of look back on and be such a higher quality, like it is most likely then going to be worth it.
Yeah, because sometimes like that, $1,000 or $2,000 can be the difference in price between a professional and just your mate.
Yeah.
So it can make a big difference.
Yeah.
And it can most of the time be worth it.
Yeah. And you also want to make sure that you kind of get along and can build a relationship with your photographer as well, because you are spending so much time with them. And I think that might be another reason why people are like, oh, well, you know, if our friend does it, we get along with them really well. So kind of we already have that rapport built with them to be able to have it be comfortable. But you can build that rapport with a professional photographer and then also have that better outcome. And
that's also part of their job as a professional photographer is they're used to creating or bonding with their clients quite quickly and making them feel comfortable.
Yeah.
So that's like, you don't have to really, you shouldn't really have to worry about that too much.
Yeah.
If you go with someone good.
Yeah. It's more just like your personalities.
Yes.
Making sure your personalities align. Like they're always going to be a nice, outgoing, friendly person. And then also if you've built that relationship with a professional photographer, a lot of the time they do other things as well as weddings. So they might do other specialize in like maternity photos or family portraits or things like that. So then once you have that kind of relationship with a photographer, you can go back to them for all of those other kind of big life events. And then they kind of feel like they're like a little bit of a part of it. You know, you can go back to them and they've done your wedding and potentially your engagement shoot as well.
Yeah. Did you have engagement photos?
We didn't, no.
Yeah. I don't know if I would get engagement ring or get engagement photos.
I think it would have been nice, but we had quite a short engagement.
Oh, yeah.
And so it just like didn't really make a lot of sense to us. But yeah. I do love engagement photos.
Sidetracked.
Yeah.
Okay, now the next one is also on that kind of same note, is not hiring a videographer. And I guess, I mean, out of the two, I would say if you have to get rid of one, I would say prioritize the photographer.
Yes.
But a videographer, I can't say that word, videographer is almost as equally as important.
I agree.
If you're more so, I guess, when it comes to tossing up between, again, a professional and maybe a family member, just because, again, you're just going to get that that next level of quality coming through.
Also, a videographer that has like a lot of wedding experience, they can pick up on things that that someone who's not a professional probably would never have picked up on. And they also give you like prompts to talk about things. And then all of a sudden you have this beautiful kind of montage of you talking about your partner or your partner talking about you that someone that's not a professional probably wouldn't have ever thought to ask you that question that would prompt kind of that feeling and those words to come out as well. So I think that's another really special thing about a videographer, because like just having a photographer, you won't get that talking sound element as well.
Yeah, and it's kind of nice, like having an actual video over photos of the day. Like, I feel like you can capture so much more in video, kind of like you were just saying with like talking about your partner and stuff. Like you're not going to get that obviously with a photo, and it's nice to kind of be able to watch that back and kind of relive and re-experience the feelings you were having right in that moment on the day. And again, it's like you're not going to get that from photos. So it can be really sweet.
Yeah, even also something like speeches, that you're not going to have that if you only have photos. You're not going to be able to go back and watch someone's speech, like especially, I feel like groomsmen always have really funny speeches or like just like funny moments and things like that. And also you will sort of get this with a photographer, but if, a few years after your wedding, you have like older family members that have passed away, with a video, you kind of really get to see them.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it just makes that a little bit more special as well, rather than just looking at a photo of you and your grandma, just as an example. You might have a beautiful video of an interaction that you had with them, or something that they said, or their reaction to you potentially walking down the aisle, or something like that, that kind of just brings them back a little bit.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's another one to kind of think about with videographers. And I think probably one of the main arguments that someone might have about not getting a videographer is that you kind of feel like you're not going to watch it. And although, yes, you might not watch your full wedding day every single week, if you have, you know, a 4 to 5 minute little highlights reel, you can easily watch that once a week or once a month with your partner or by yourself, or show people that want to know what your day was like. And I think that it's just so special, to be able to go back and rewatch that.
Yeah, especially, in particular, that little highlights reel. Like, because I really enjoy seeing people's wedding videos and stuff, and seeing, just little moments from the day to get a feel for, what everyone was wearing, even. Just like seeing all like the flowers and just all the really cute moments from the day. Like, I love seeing that from different people. So, I feel like it is quite nice to just be able to have that on hand and just be able to just chuck it on just whenever, just when you need to pick me up.
Yeah.
When you want to reminisce on the day.
Something else I think to think about is, and this is with a lot of things, if you're tossing up a videographer, a better photographer, any kind of other element that might cost an extra money, and you might be kind of thinking, no, I won't do that due to your budget. I think the first thing to potentially look at is your guest list. Overall, your guests and catering and that kind of thing is going to be your most expensive cost. So if you potentially have people on your guest list who you actually don't really care to have there, I would say, or plus ones, I would say that they are probably, you're going to value having the videographer over having all of these people that you don't care to have at your wedding.
Yep.
So if that's your main reason, if budget is your main reason for not having a videographer, then look to your guest list first.
Yeah.
And then also, if you're someone who is on the fence about whether or not to get a videographer for whatever reason, you're probably going to be most likely to regret not getting one.
Yeah.
If you absolutely do not care about a videographer, you're less likely to regret it. But yeah,
no one's ever, we spoke to a videographer a couple episodes back, and he literally even said as well, he's like, no one's ever regretted getting a video done.
Yeah.
So do with that what you will.
Yeah.
All right. Our next thing that you may regret is not having a first look. So basically, a first look is right before everything, the ceremony. You have a moment with your partner where you see each other and have a first look. And this is usually done in private, so it's just the two of you. It's a really kind of sweet moment where, you can just kind of take it all in and, see each other for the first time before walking down the aisle.
Yeah, I think a first look can also take a lot of the pressure off of that first moment being in front of all of your guests. It can be like a very special moment between just you and your partner, not having that kind of outside view of everybody else, kind of all eyes on you while you're just trying to have that nice moment, I guess, with your partner. First looks are also absolutely a lifesaver when it comes to time. Generally speaking, you will do your first look and then you'll have your portraits taken with your partner. I guess traditionally your portraits would be after your ceremony. So it kind of just means that all of those portraits and would you say not that getting portraits are ugly, but the
more
formal kind of boring, I guess, stuff.
Yeah.
It gets that out of the way. And then after the ceremony's over, then you can enjoy cocktail hour with your guests, enjoy more, I guess, quality time with your partner. And then, yeah, kind of just makes, I guess, the flow of the day a little bit better because you're not getting taken away by your photographer from everything to go and get your portraits done. So, yeah, it's just something to think about. Not everybody who doesn't do a first look regrets it, but it can be quite common because of that reason of you getting pulled away from your cocktail hour straight after your ceremony, you go into portraits. And then, yeah, you kind of might not get that moment with your guests during cocktail hour.
Yeah.
Another reason for doing this, and this is probably a really big one, is if you're having a later ceremony and then you'll be going into your portraits after the ceremony, you need to consider the light of the day and sunset and all of that thing. If you're potentially having a ceremony at like 5:30 p.m. and the sun sets at 6:15, you're not going to get those like daytime portraits. So depending on your timeline for the day, doing a first look to be able to get those portraits done during daylight might be like the best option.
Yeah. And you could always get a few extra photos taken afterwards as well if you wanted to get that like sunset photo. But yeah, it's definitely something to keep in mind when you're figuring out if you want to do one or not, or if you're going to be in darkness later in the day.
Yeah. And then another point for this is that you do get to spend generally more time with your partner on the wedding day if you have a first look, because you are spending that kind of maybe 45 minutes or an hour after your first look with your portraits to spend time with them. And then you have your ceremony, you're spending time with them through that, your cocktail hour and the reception. Whereas if you don't see them, then you kind of miss out on that hour potentially.
Yeah. Another benefit, I guess, which I don't know if this would apply to everyone, but you're also a bit more fresh right before, at that point you've just come out of hair and makeup. So yeah, everything, you're going to be absolutely I mean, you'll look perfect the entire day. Yeah. But you know what I mean. When right after you've had your makeup done, everything, it's just, you're not shiny, everything's in place. And because not everyone has, I guess, their makeup artist come through the entire day with them to touch up, and it's usually just your own touch-ups. So yeah, I guess that's another benefit, is that everything's going to be fresh out of the makeup chair and hair.
Also, like if you cry during the ceremony, then you might need a touch up before your portraits. But. Yeah. All right. This next one is inviting too many people or inviting people just to please others. So it's like really common when it comes to wedding planning that your family members will want to have their say and potentially take control of the guest list. But you have to try and remember that it is your day. And obviously, if you've got parents that are paying for the wedding, I know this is when it can get, I guess, a little bit more tricky, because they are the ones putting money into the wedding. So they want to be able to invite whoever they want. But yeah, it's really important that you kind of set boundaries with your parents or whoever it is that is kind of wanting to invite all of these people, and say, this is the kind of day that we want. And if that doesn't include, all of your cousins or family friends or all of these other people, it shouldn't include those people.
Yeah. And this is another big one. I know people can sometimes start feeling a bit guilty about inviting, like, if I invite this person, I have to invite this person because they'll get upset. Like, I know in some cases that is the truth, that people will get annoyed or a bit cut that they didn't get an invite to the wedding. But at the end of the day, again, it comes back to what you want. And if you're only inviting someone because if you don't invite them, they'll get mad, then I know it's a tough one in those situations, because I don't want to say it can put, a rift in friendships, but I know sometimes that's definitely the reality. But also, like, it is your day, and you have to just, like, I just find it makes me mad hearing people say that, like, someone or hearing stories of how people, lost a friend or, something happened or whatever because of those situations. Like, it's just like people, I feel like, just need to be aware that if they don't get an invite, it's like, it's not personal. It's, you know what I mean?
I definitely agree. Sometimes people do take it very personally.
Yeah.
And like, I don't think it's ever really like that. It's just, you wanting to have your day a certain way. And if that person isn't like in the vision that you want for your wedding day, it's nothing personal to them, especially like if you're having a smaller wedding. I can understand people getting like a bit annoyed or frustrated or upset if you're having like a massive wedding. And you're inviting all of these people and then you don't invite like that one cousin or something. It makes sense. But if you are wanting a smaller or just like a more intimate wedding, people shouldn't be getting upset over that. And if they are, like, that's a them problem and not a you problem that you need to take on.
Yeah, so you don't need to feel guilty about that.
Yeah. All right, moving on, we have not going to your cocktail hour. So your cocktail hour, we do have a full episode on cocktail hour. So if you want to listen to that, we'll have it in the show notes. But your cocktail hour is kind of a chance for you to relax a little bit. It's got quite a different vibe than obviously your ceremony and your reception. So going to your cocktail hour, it can just be, that time for you to kind of settle in, relax, say hi to all of your guests, be with your partner, and just kind of hang out a little bit. So this is, I guess, where doing the first look is very beneficial because chances are you are then able to go to your cocktail hour. And that might not mean like fully going to your cocktail hour and hanging out with your guests the whole time, but you might go off and just spend some time, you and your partner, alone and having something to eat.
Okay, so speaking to your vendors and your team can really help with the timeline of the day in this kind of situation. So your photographer, videographer, your wedding planner, all that, they can help you craft your wedding timeline or the timeline of the day so that you can be present for this cocktail hour. Or if you want to take time just to be alone with your partner and split it up with just them and then also with your guests. Take on or consult them. They're the professionals. They've done it hundreds of times, I'm sure. It can be really helpful just to, coordinate with them and see what works. So, you can make it to your cocktail hour because it can be really a fun experience being there.
Yeah. And also in that timeline that you work out with them, make sure that you have a bit of a buffer on either side of each, I guess, big event. So if you are getting your portraits done after your ceremony, make sure that you have kind of 15 minutes before your portraits and 15 minutes after, just so that you can then go, we're finishing up, we've still got 15 minutes, let's actually go and join cocktail hour before we have to do whatever it is that's next on your kind of list. That will help release a lot of the pressure and like stress of the day because you're not feeling like, okay, we only have this amount of time and then straight after that we've got to do this and then straight after that we've got to do this. It does give you that time to kind of relax in between each thing as well.
And that you're not running around to each thing. Yeah. All right. So our next potential regret is following wedding trends. Yeah, I feel like we say this with a grain of salt in the sense that obviously if you love something, do it, but don't do something because it's not on trend. Don't not do something because it's not on trend. Is that the right? Like if let's just for example, like I mean, I know pearls are on trend at the moment, but let's say pearls weren't on trend and you really love pearls, like still have pearls. It doesn't really matter if they're on trend or not. Like your wedding day is just one of those things. And I say the same thing to people about engagement rings is don't not pick something just because people don't think it's trendy or it's in style, because the fact of the matter is every different style will go in and out of fashion. And as long as you love it, it doesn't actually matter what's trending in the industry. Like naturally things are going to trend and not trend and whatnot. So like as long as it's something you really, really love, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. And I think like as well as that, don't not do something because it's not a trend. Don't do something just because it's a trend if you don't really love it.
Yes.
Like at the moment, bows are very, very trendy. But if you don't like bows, you never would have looked at a bow and thought, oh my God, that's like so cute. I'll put it in my wedding. I got a bow. Like maybe don't plan it into your wedding. And like, especially with social media and TikTok, I feel like things go in and out of style so quickly these days. Like if you plan your wedding, say potentially around this bow trend, and your wedding is still 18 months away, by the time that comes around, like there's every chance that bows are no longer going to be in, and you might be looking at them and going, oh my God, like why did I plan my whole wedding
it's
around
not me.
this one trend? It's not me. It was just a trend that I saw that I thought was really cute at the time.
Yeah.
And now I don't like it and I can't back out because
you're in too deep.
You're in too deep. Yeah. Trends can, I guess, age your wedding very quickly. Like I said, you know, if you're planning something for 18 months away or whatever it is, and a trend is going to come and go in 6 months, it's going to be like very obvious that you had, say, a 2024 wedding in 2026 because you did that one trend that was only trendy for 6 months. And now it's like not. And then you might potentially look back and go, oh, why did I do pearls, or why did I do this or that?
Yeah.
Because it wasn't me. And now it's so obvious that that's when the wedding was.
Yeah.
And it's not.
Yeah. And I
timeless,
feel like,
I guess.
Yeah. And I feel like that kind of mainly applies to, I guess, if you're just subtly including a trend, then I don't think it matters too much.
No.
Like if, let's say with the bows, if you've just got one bow in your hair, that's not obviously going to be that obvious. But if you're covering
if you've got bows in your hair, you've got bows decorating everything,
that's when it's going to be a little more obvious that, it was on trend. If it's not typically something you'd choose as a person sort of thing. Obviously, if you've always loved bows, like that's different, because then it's not on trend. It's just what you love. But I guess, keep that in mind.
Yeah.
That if you do want to include a trend, you can do it in a more kind of subtle way. So it's still kind of timeless.
Yeah, I think also on like the wedding trends kind of same thing is like there's the color of the year. And that's another thing that a lot of people will like look to plan their wedding. Oh, what's the color of the year? Oh, okay, it's peach this year. So let's do a peach theme. That's like another thing that you don't just have to do that color because that's what's trending and what like big companies have said is the color of the year that you should be using for your wedding. Like pick colors that you love, not just because they're popular.
Yeah, for sure.
Next up is probably one of the most common wedding day regrets, and it is not spending enough time with your partner. I think probably everyone that I have ever seen talk about, spoken to, says, I wish I'd spent more time with my partner.
Yeah.
Me included.
Yeah.
Because, and like everybody says it, the day goes by so quickly, like it's gone in the blink of an eye. And it does. And because of that, it's so easy to get caught up doing other things, caught up with your guests, and then not actually spending that much time with your partner.
And like being able to like actually talk to them and have a conversation with them, like that sort of stuff. Like I know there's blocks of the day, like the photos where you're with them for like an hour or whatever it may be, but like you're not necessarily talking to each other during that period because you're posing and whatnot. So I guess that can sometimes feel like it wasn't quality time throughout the day. Or so, it's like actually taking little breaks to like, oh my God.
Yeah.
and have that connection with them.
Yeah. That is also, I think, where having like a good day of team, so your photographer, videographer, coordinator, whoever's going to be there like with you for most of the day, really comes into play, because on our wedding day, our photographer and our videographer constantly, like throughout our throughout the night, throughout our portrait session, they'd say, guys, like, you just got married. Like, you are officially husband and wife. Like, take a moment to just like feel that.
Yeah.
And so them doing that kind of made you go, okay, yeah, we're not just getting photos done. Like, we actually just got married.
Yeah.
And it let you kind of sit in that feeling. So that's another thing, that having those like professional photographers and videographers really do make a difference.
Yeah. And it's like in those situations, it's like in the moment you're getting a chance to feel all that, but then they're also capturing you guys feeling that.
Yeah.
And it's genuine emotion, which is equally as like nice to capture.
Yeah. All right. Our last most common wedding day regret is choosing the wrong people for your wedding party. This can be a really, really tricky one because you don't know, obviously, what's going to happen, you know, in 6 months' time or in 2 years' time after your wedding, if you are still going to be friends with all of these people. But it is quite common for people to fall out with their close friends after a wedding, and especially, you know, after you have children. Like so many people at kind of that age group who are getting married, I guess from like your 20s and up, you and your friends often are on very different paths. So you might be getting married and settling down and wanting to have children, but your best friend is like not at all ready for that. They still want to, you know, go and travel and party, and, you know, not that there's anything wrong with that, but your values might just not align. And so it is, and it's very sad, but it is quite common to not be close with the people that you were close with when you were, I guess, younger. So something that you can do to, I guess, try and avoid this a little bit is, for starters, don't choose your bridal or your wedding party too early. If you're planning a wedding for 18 months away and you choose your wedding party, you know, 18 months out from your wedding, you might end up having a falling out with those people, or just kind of drifting apart, even not necessarily a falling out, but you might just start drifting apart, and then you still have to have them in your wedding, or you have that awkward conversation of, hey, like, I don't think that you should be part of. I don't think it's right anymore. I don't think you should be part of the wedding party. So if you can avoid that, obviously, that's what you want. And then something else is that you need to choose people who you really want to be part of the whole process, and not just because you feel like you have to have them because, you know, it's someone that's been your best friend since high school and you always said you were going to be each other's bridesmaids, but now you kind of are drifting apart a little bit, but you still feel the pressure to have them.
I feel like this is also a big one with siblings. I mean, I'm very lucky in the sense that I'm very close with my siblings, and they're my, like, absolutely, I'm going to pick them. But I know that's not all the case, or always the case for a lot of siblings. And I feel like, again, it's like there can be this pressure to choose your brother or sister because you're family. But looking at your history, it's like you're not actually your personalities clash a little bit, and you know it's just going to be a recipe for disaster sort of thing. So yeah, I feel like that kind of comes into play.
Yeah, or
well.
even like having to like have your partner's siblings. So like if your partner has a sister and you are feeling pressured to have that sister as part of your bridal party, but you don't really talk to them, or your partner doesn't really talk to them, and that can just make things that little bit awkward, because you do have to spend, you know, a decent amount of time with them in the lead up, and
all the photos,
events, everything. It can just get a little bit awkward. So be really mindful when you're choosing your wedding party, and make sure that the people that you're choosing are people who you can see a future with, and not just people that you have history with.
Yeah. And I think as well, another good thing to look at or just think about when you're picking your bridal party is also people's personality types. Because I know sometimes you can be friends with someone, but you know that they have not an inkling, what's the word? A tendency to be maybe slightly judgmental, or just slightly, you know, something in that realm where it's like sometimes their opinion isn't helpful, or they're too harsh with their opinion to the point where, like, if you're trying on dresses and stuff and they're being quite negative and saying that they hate every single one, even though you're kind of liking the dresses, it puts a bit of a downer on the day, or like, you know, it just doesn't make you feel good. And so, like, they might be a really lovely person and their intentions may always be good, but sometimes it just doesn't come across that way. I know it's something that can happen with friends and people. Yeah. So I think it's also just, something to keep in mind, that it's like, who's going to make you feel the best during the entire process and support you, and always remember that it's about you. It is okay that it's about you, because it is. So you don't want people who are going to make it about them and make a fuss about things, which it's just going to add stress to you, and you don't want that.
Yeah, and I think also if you have someone like that is kind of very opinionated, and their opinion is often very different to yours, it can make you second guess your decisions as well, and potentially choose things that you wouldn't have if you didn't have that opinion. So you might end up going with a dress that was maybe your second option, but they've said is way better and then you regret not having, you know, the dress that you actually wanted. Yeah. And they get their way, and then it just kind of, you're not prioritizing yourself and your opinions throughout the process. Mm-hmm. I think something to remember is that it doesn't matter probably how much planning you do, how much you think about all of the things that you could potentially regret and all of the little details. There's a high chance that there will be something that you kind of wish you had done differently on the day. And that is very, very common, and it's also okay. Yep. Like, as long as you do the best that you can in the wedding planning process, you keep yourself and your partner as, you know, your priority. Don't stress the small stuff when it comes to, like, after the wedding day. Don't go, don't stress about if you go, we shouldn't have had those flowers because, like, that specific flower, because I actually don't like it, or anything like that. It doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. Yeah.
At the end of the day, you're marrying the love of your life, and that's what truly matters. So, all the little things. People are still going to enjoy themselves. They're not going to think about, like, do you remember Sheridan's wedding? She had those weird flowers. Like, no, no one's going to be thinking about that apart from you. And it always ends up being the most amazing day. So,
Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of the Save the Date podcast. We hope you learned something new, and if you're currently planning your wedding, congratulations, good luck, and have fun.
If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you follow or subscribe and leave us a review wherever it is that you're listening.
Make sure to come and connect with us on our socials at the Save the Date podcast, and join our Facebook group, the Save the Date community. We hope you have a wonderful day or night, and we'll be back with another episode next week. Bye.
Bye. You're listening to the Save the Date podcast, where we talk all things weddings, jewellery and romance. With love from Cullen Jewellery.
Hello and welcome back to the Save the Date podcast. I'm Sheridan.
And I'm Juliet, and we are so happy you're here.
Today we are actually answering some of your questions. So we asked you on our socials to ask us any questions that you had about wedding planning or anything wedding related, and we're going to answer some for you.
So sit back, relax, and let's get straight into it.
All right. Our first question is, should we pay for our guests' transport to our venue so they can drink?
I would say this is dependent on a couple things. One, if your budget allows it and you would like to do it, I reckon go ahead.
Yeah.
And then the second one is depending how far your guests have to travel for your wedding.
Yeah, I agree.
So if your venue is maybe an hour or two out of the city where most of your guests live, I would encourage maybe to organise some sort of mini bus or chauffeur
Yeah.
thing, just because, it is a little bit difficult to then for them to get home.
Yeah. It's not really like they can just easily get an Uber
Yes.
or something like that home.
Yeah. But outside of those situations, I don't think you're obligated to do that.
Yeah. The only other time I would say yes, possibly, is if you're having like a destination wedding, for example, and not even necessarily if this is like overseas, but if it's just further out, kind of like you said, and you've got a lot of guests coming to stay nearby, is to do like a bus or a shuttle or something from where most people are staying to the venue, even if it's like 15 minutes, because again, it might just not be super easy for them to get an Uber. Like, for example, where we got married is like an hour and a half probably away from the city. But it's also like you wouldn't be able to get an Uber.
Yeah. Or even a taxi would be really difficult. Yeah.
Because of where it is. So that's another thing to factor in as well, is like how easy will it be for these people to organize their own way home, or back to the hotel or something like that.
If they did want to drink.
Yeah.
So, a few things to consider. But like if your venue was in the city or close by to the city, or it's in a spot
where there's public transport
or it is relatively easy to get an Uber or a taxi, I wouldn't say you're definitely not obligated to provide that for your guests.
No. And also I think that like even no matter where your wedding venue is, I don't think many guests would be expecting it.
No.
Because it's not something that most people do. They are going to still think about how they're going to get themselves there and back. So I would never feel obligated to do it. It's more just like you said at the very beginning, if your budget allows, then absolutely go for it.
Okay, next question. What are the non-negotiables and what can you look for alternatives to?
This is a really good question. And I think, to be honest, this is going to vary so much based on you and your partner and your vision for your wedding. But the non-negotiables that I would say that like you need to not even like splurge on, but go with like your real gut and like a favorites kind of thing would be your photographer, your venue, kind of like those real big vendors. So venue, photographer, videographer if you want one, makeup artist I would say would be something that you don't really want to find an alternative for, like possibly, but that can really make or break it.
Yeah.
And probably like your music.
Yes.
Something you can look for alternatives. This might be like a controversial take, but I think your wedding dress, because you might be looking at have like your dream dress is by a designer and it's going to cost you a minimum of like $10,000, but another designer